If you guys don't know who BLU is, they're that small fish in the big sea. And basically, they are a Miami-based company that makes some inexpensive smartphones, both Windows phones and Android devices. And so far, they've remained just inexpensive, really cheap feeling devices. But it looks like that's gonna all change here with this device. It's the latest and most premium device to date. Hey guys, John V from PhoneArena here. You're watching our video review of the BLU Pure XL. Alright, the biggest attraction about the phone is its $350 outright cost, and that undercuts the competition, namely the Moto X Style Pure Edition, the OnePlus 2, and the ZTE Axon Pro. It's cheaper than all those other low-cost premium smartphones. You also get a dual SIM and unlock device here, which is pretty nice, and that's in tow with some high-end specs all around you look. So you have a Quad HD display, a 24 megapixel camera, an octa-core MediaTek X10 processor, 64 gigabytes of storage, and you even have a micro SD card slot. On top of that, you even have a fingerprint sensor in the back, which acts just like the one you find in the iPhone 6 and the Galaxy S6. So it's pretty easy to operate. You just rest your finger over it and it unlocks the phone. And top it up, it has a somewhat pretty good design. It's solid for a BLU phone because in the past, many of BLU's products were just poorly built, but this has a substantial feel to it and feels pretty well built, despite the fact that it has a hefty size. And it's the size that's going to be probably the biggest deal breaker for some people. Making itself a relevant player in the space, it features a 6-inch Quad HD Super AMOLED display, and with that you're going to get some amazing looking details, very crisp and sharp, no issues with that. However, it is a poorly calibrated screen and kind of harkens back to the type of characteristics we saw with some Samsung Super AMOLED panels a couple years ago. In fact, it produces a color temperature of 8100 Kelvin, which is extremely cold, so the color white tends to look more bluish than anything else. And when you look at the color spectrum chart, it's far from being accurate. In fact, it's more overblown and oversaturated with its color reproduction. And finally, you have a very weak 343 nit brightness, which makes it tough to view in outdoor conditions when the sun is around, just because the display becomes washed out and almost unviewable. One area that really surprised us is the audio side of the phone. It's actually one of the best we've experienced in a while. First, you have the rear firing speaker. It produces a strong 80.8 decibel output, which produces a commanding presence in large open spaces. And if you're gonna go with the headphone jack, there are various DTS equalizer settings that really enhance the quality even more. And with that, when you combine that and the Super AMOLED display, how iridescent it is and those overblown colors, it really provides for an immersive watching experience when it comes to videos. Add to that, it's one of the snappiest phones we've tested out lately too, and it just shows when you navigate through the UI. It's powered by an octa-core MediaTek Helio X10 chipset with 3 gigabytes of RAM. It handles all the trivial tasks with ease, so navigating across the UI, surfing the web, opening up apps, it just has some instant and tight responses that we really enjoy. However, when we look at some of the benchmark tests, it's slightly behind the results you get out of devices running either the Snapdragon 810 or the Exynos 7 chipset, but despite that, it's still pretty good. They also made sure to focus on the camera, and it's definitely a monster in this area. So what we have here is an 8 megapixel wide-angle front camera, and on the back you have a 24 megapixel camera with an f2.0 aperture lens, optical image stabilization, you have sapphire lens cover, dual-tone LED flash, and yes, even a handy dedicated shutter key, a 2-level one. With the interface itself, it offers a good mixture of shooting modes and manual controls. So you have staple things like HDR, panoramic, and even face beauty. But in addition, you have other things like ultra pixel and professional, which really cater to enthusiasts. With the professional mode, you can even control the shutter speed and set it for as long as 12 seconds. So it's pretty equipped for low lighting photography. And you can see more of its, its appeal to enthusiasts with the level meter guide right here with the interface. Now this is a perfect example of how a higher megapixel camera doesn't necessarily mean it's going to take superior shots. In fact, the overall quality is just average. It takes some decent shots, but it's not above the Note 5 or the LG G4 in this regard. So with outdoor scenery shots, you get some okay looking photos, but it tends to overexpose them, which is kind of strange. Under lower lighting conditions, we do notice some speckled noise in the scenery, but it's mitigated, so it's not really too distracting, but still able to draw out some details and good colors at the same time. Now, if you use the long exposure of its professional mode, you'll achieve some better looking photos where it's able to draw out even more details when lighting is insufficient. And if you have to use the LED flash, we just recommend doing it at around 7 feet, because between 3 to 5 feet, it tends to be kind of strong and overexposed images. Now, there are a bunch of different video recording modes on here, up to Ultra HD 4K resolution, and with that, you get some strong details with the video, and you can still use the digital zoom pretty effectively. However though, the color reproduction tends to be on the colder side, so very bluish in tone, and we don't like the fact that it lacks continuous autofocus and that the audio recording is on the thin side. Out of everything it has to offer, the biggest disappointment that we have is its underwhelming battery performance. Now you can see that it's not a skinny phone. They're able to fashion a 3500 milliamp hour battery in here, but it just gets an average performance. So you'll get 1 day of normal usage, which means that it requires nightly recharges. And our battery benchmark test, it gets a mark of 6 hours and 13 minutes, which again puts in the average category. Now with the 3500 milliamp hour battery, we were hoping to get a lot more out of it, but unfortunately that's not the case. And its recharge time too is a little bit on the longer side at 150 minutes. We're also not fans of its bloated software experience. Now on the surface, it might look like it's running stock Android Lollipop, but that's not the case. It doesn't have an apps panel, so the home screen can get a bit disorganized with all the icons littering the home screen here. You do have a good amount of personalization with its theme maker, but it has a bunch of redundant air gesture features that we saw previously on many of Samsung's smartphones in the past. So basically, you wave your hand over the display, and you could do that to turn on the display while it's off. You could even navigate through the home screen here and even through the gallery app. It's cool at first, but it's not a feature we'd actually use a whole lot. It lacks also a multitasking element, which some other phones offer, so it doesn't have that same degree of functionality. And for a phablet, there are no one-handed modes whatsoever, so it's pretty cumbersome to try and interact with the smartphone using it with only one hand. BLU has done a nice job with the Pure XL. We gotta say, it's their best phone to date, and it has a pretty good package considering the $350 outright price point it has. And with that, you get incredible value, which really undercuts the competition out there. You're not going to get any other phone with this type of performance and its spec sheet. And you have even some added amenities in there, like a fingerprint sensor that we don't see too often in many of these low-cost premium smartphones. And if you could somehow tolerate its larger size, its underwhelming battery, and the bloated software experience, this is a great phone for you. You won't be disappointed by what it has to offer, and it's definitely something you want to consider.